Hey everyone. We just wrapped up our series called Basics for a Life Worth Living, and we took the last 2 weeks to talk about a very important topic, which was conflict resolution. It's one of those things that I think is like one of the biggest problems that the church faces today. For whatever reason, I've just seen it over the years that people could be, come to church, be Christians for many, many years, 10, 20 years, and yet whenever there's something that happens that they disagree with or, whatever, um, it just doesn't go well. A lot of people vote with their feet, they leave the church, they don't engage in conversation, and they don't look to resolve the issue. And so that's always frustrated me. So this is something that I feel is very important for us at Stone Coast, that we get in front of this and that we really learn what it takes to resolve conflict in a healthy way. And so this past week we looked, well, actually the last 2 weeks we looked at the story of Joseph, and I feel like he's a great person to look at because he had a very, very difficult life. And one of the things with resolving conflict is how we view the things that happen to us. And so I was challenging us to say, look, when conflict happens, when issues happen, look at it as an opportunity to get better. Look at an opportunity to grow in our maturity. Look at it as an opportunity to communicate better and to resolve issues. So Joseph went through life where right off the bat, his brothers sold him into slavery, and he chose not to let that define his entire life. He ended up being one of the lead officials with Potiphar, and then as he was going through that, Potiphar's wife falsely accused him of raping her, and again he got thrown in jail, and I could just imagine, put myself in his shoes and just thinking about how you could feel like, wow, life is really against me. Or you could look at it as another opportunity to grow and to develop and find out what God is really up to. And one of the things I loved about Joseph was how he had a real great godly perspective. I want to read a verse to you that I feel is a great verse for all of us to remember and to think about. It says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." That's great perspective when you're in the midst of having in your past where your brothers were so mad at you and so jealous of you that they had you enslaved, then to be falsely accused and be thrown in prison, and yet to come out of that and to still look at God in a way that says, you know what, you want to use my life to bring about good, even though I've gone through these horrible things. So the first point that we talked about was having perspective, and perspective is what we see. Do we see the problem, or do we see solutions? Do we see it as an opportunity? And I would challenge all of us to always step back. Whenever you get conflict, to step back and ask ourselves some tough questions. Ask ourselves, what can I learn from this, and how can I get better as a result of this? Try to take the high road. Try to extend mercy and grace. Give the other person the benefit of the doubt. But whatever we do, enter into that situation with a bigger picture, right? So we understand that God is a God of love and of mercy and of forgiveness, and he wants us to restore our relationship. So let's do everything we can to see it in those eyes, not our own eyes, but in God's eyes. And then the other thing that we talked about was this idea of reframing, which is, what story will I tell myself? We all have something going on in our head. Every time we get hurt or offended, we tell ourselves a certain story. And a lot of times we make that person bad in that story. And I just want to encourage us to think about it differently and think about creating a different story.